Hello readers, I'm Amy, back today to talk about what the book club read and reading Margaret Atwood. So I posted a video a couple of months ago talking about what the book club read, which is a book club hosted by What Victoria Read. And we, for the 17 to 18 months that this is going on, are going to be reading one Margaret Atwood novel per month in publication order. And this is going back to my video that I posted predicting what I would rate those books, which I initially got the idea because everyone's posting these 5-star predictions videos, and I'm like, well, what about the not 5-star predictions? So figured I'd do a predictions video for Margaret Atwood. And first book that we ended up reading was not Lady Oracle. Get organized, girl. The Edible Woman, which I initially started reading this back in college, and I hated it because nothing happened in this book, and I didn't finish it. And then in January of this year, whenever we start reading Margaret Atwood, I go ahead and get this beautiful copy and start reading it, and I loved it, even though still nothing happened. So, as Victoria has mentioned, Margaret Atwood's initial books are all pretty heavily literary fiction, which is not at all my genre. I have read several literary fiction. Most of them do not work out for me. However, I really liked this. This is following our main character as she's getting engaged and navigating her work and kind of wondering what the point of everything is. What I didn't notice until we did the end of month discussion for this book was that there's a perspective change at one point. So at the beginning of the book, you have the I perspective, and then as it goes on, it says Marion did this and Marion did that instead of I. And I thought that was a really interesting thing that she did, even though I didn't notice it whenever I was first reading it. And this is just about how women are thought of as something to be consumed rather than something to be engaged with, and I just really, really enjoyed this book. Let's see, I have to pop up my video here. It looks like my initial prediction for this book was that I would rate it 4 stars. So what did I end up rating it? I don't know, because I'm unprepared and don't have it up here yet. Goodreads says that I rated this 4 stars. So good on me. I was incorrect, but I rated it higher than I thought I would, so that's good news. Next book that we ended up reading was Surfacing, which I was not into. It sounded like it was pretty much everyone's least favorite book from the first 4 months of this book club. Surfacing, again, heavy literary fiction. You have this girl who is talking about her father who went missing or something, and she's going on this little trip with her friends where her friends just want to hang out and she wants to look for her dad or something and was not into it. The characters in that book were so pretentious and awful. I hated every single one of them. Just was not into it and DNF'd it, 4 chapters in? It was a fairly speedy read, so I kept thinking I'll go back and finish it later, and I didn't. And I just don't think I would have gotten much out of it, which I also ended up, one of my friends had recommended a Margaret Atwood documentary to me from Hulu. I can't remember what it's called, but I'll put it up on the screen. And it made me feel bad because they're talking about like how much people loved these initial books of hers. And I'm thinking maybe I should give it another chance. But I also have to remember just because someone else loved the book didn't mean that I would love the book. So according to my predictions video, I thought that I was going to rate Surfacing 3 stars. And ends up I didn't even finish the book. So was way off on that one. Then the third book that we ended up reading was Lady Oracle. This was my second favorite of the 2 that I ended up finishing. This book, the main character ends up faking her death and moving to Italy, and then as you're going through the book, you're seeing kind of her life story and how she got to that point where she faked her death. She's not like super happy in the marriage that she's in. She's trying to figure things out. And while I really enjoyed the first 3/4 of this book, There is a trope that Margaret Atwood uses over and over and over again that showed up again towards the end of this book. And by the time I was 3/4 of the book, not only was I already sick and tired of that trope, but I'm also just like, is this book going to end eventually? Because 3/4 of the way into the book, we kept getting her life story, and then it was just kind of slowing down. And at that point, I didn't really get what point Atwood was trying to make with this book, so I enjoyed it. But I do think the last quarter of the book could have just been cut out and I would have been happy with it. So according to my predictions video, I predicted that I would rate Lady Oracle 4 stars. And I ended up rating it 3 stars, which was close, but once again, I was wrong. So we have one book that I rated lower than I thought it would, and another book that I rated higher, and the other 2 ended up being DNFs. So book 4 was Life Before Man, and here we're going to talk about this trope of Margaret Atwood's. Like many readers, I loathe cheating tropes. Like, if you're in a relationship and you're not happy in the relationship, try and end the relationship or have a talk with your partner about maybe opening up the relationship. But cheating tropes just annoy me. They're never well done. They're never interesting to me. It always ends up just pissing me off. So in Edible Woman, at one point, we have the main character cheat on her fiancé with this guy who one reader in the discussion afterwards actually predicted didn't even exist and was like part of her imagination, which I think was interesting and would have worked well in that book. But that topic wasn't really explored through the book, so I'm like, was it real? Was it not? I don't know. But anyways, cheating trope. And then surfacing while I DNF'd it, I had really strong vibes from these pretentious characters that someone was going to end up getting cheated on. So counting that book. Lady Oracle, towards the end of the book, she's cheating on her husband, trying to find herself or something. And Life Before Man is all about cheating and how this woman's lover committed suicide, and we're just talking about how she's in this depression because she misses her lover who she cheated on her husband with. And I'm like, Margaret Atwood, why? Why are you focusing on this cheating thing? It's not interesting. It doesn't make for good content. Can we move on from this cheating trope, please? So now that I am finished with those 4 books, I am going to talk about the next 4 books. So that is May through August, and the books that we are going to be reading for those months. So the first book that we have here for May is Bodily Harm. This one is about Rennie Wilford, a young journalist whose life has begun to shatter around the edges. Flies to the Caribbean? I think I usually say Caribbean, but Caribbean sounds better. I don't know. Tangent. Anyways, flies there to recuperate, and on the tiny island of St. Antoine, she is confronted by a world where her rules for survival no longer apply. It's ultimately an exploration of the lust for power, both sexual and political, and the need for compassion that goes beyond what we ordinarily mean by love. Honestly, I think I would hate this book. I've also been told by Victoria that it is supposed to be the last of her literary fiction stuff at the beginning of her writing career, so I have actually decided to skip this one. I'm not going to DNF it. I'm not going to read it. I'm gonna pass on. The political power is never something that I'm interested in, even though I'm interested in the sexual power. But so far, Margaret Atwood's sexual power has often included cheating, and I'm just not into that trope. So going to pass on Bodily Harm. Then June's read is Handmaid's Tale. I predict I'm going to give this 5 stars because I've already read it and I gave it 5 stars. Handmaid's Tale I read back in college on a teacher's recommendation, and I loved it. I hated it and I loved it in the way that I hate and love women's dystopia in general. I hate it because dystopia makes me really uncomfortable, and the concepts that they explore make me really uncomfortable because it usually relates to reproduction and women's rights, and it's just a very uncomfortable reading experience. But I love women's dystopia because it does explore these issues, and I love getting the women's perspective on what the dystopia would be like. I have hated classic dystopia generally. I liked Fahrenheit 451. It wasn't a favorite, but I enjoyed it. Cannot get started on 1984. The writing style is just putting me to sleep within the first page. Hated, what's the book called? Brave New World. Absolutely hated it. So women's dystopia and more modern dystopia is definitely to my taste, and Handmaid's Tale was it. I know it's going to be a rough read. I'm going to try and read some lighter things in between now and then so I can kind of prepare myself, because I have been reading a lot of heavy content lately. But anyways, Handmaid's Tale is about the dystopia. Margaret Atwood was inspired by and actually took things from real life to make this book. So this book is composed of real life events mishmashed and put together. And we're following Offred, who is basically, her name is of Fred. She is owned by Fred. You have the women who can reproduce, and then you have the wives, and you have, what is it, the aunts or something? And the really creepy part, because there's rape in this book, so beware when reading this. You will have the wife laying on the bed, and then you have the handmaid between her legs, and the husband having sex with the handmaid in order to try and reproduce, and it's like once a month, which I find really inadequate. Like, if you want to reproduce, that is not the way to do it. You should probably be going at it like bunnies and not just once a month. But anyways, so it's really creepy. There is a TV show. I cannot watch it. I've only ever made it halfway through the first season. I've tried several times, but film just hits me a lot harder than books do. If I read a book, it probably won't scare me that much. I probably won't cry. But if I watch a film, I will cry at the drop of a hat. I'll get totally freaked out. Films make me so much more emotional. So I'm not going to be watching the show. I will just be reading the book. But anyways, predict that I'm going to rate it 5 stars. Because, I already spoiled myself, and I know that I'm going to rate it 5 stars because I've read it and I loved it. July is Cat's Eye. This is about Elaine Risley. She's a controversial painter who returns to Toronto, the city of her youth, for a retrospective of her art. Engulfed by vivid images of the past, she reminisces about a trio of girls who initiated her into the fierce politics of childhood and its secret world of friendship, longing, and betrayal. Elaine must come to terms with her own identity as a daughter, a lover, an artist, and a woman. But above all, she must seek release from her haunting memories. I don't know what to think of this. It sounds kind of literary fiction, but also not kind of literary fiction. It sounds very mysterious. So I'm predicting a 2.5 to 3 stars, which sounds like a really low rating for a book that I'm going to read, but I'm going to read it anyways, because I have heard a lot about this book over the years, and I want to see what everyone's been talking about. And last, for August, we have The Robber Bride, which is inspired by The Robber Bridegroom, which is a grisly tale from the Brothers Grimm, in which an evil groom lures 3 maidens into his lair and devours them one by one. So I want to try and read that right before I'm reading the book, so I have an idea of where Margaret Atwood got her inspiration. She brilliantly recasts the monster as Xenia, a villainess of demonic proportions, and sets her loose in the lives of 3 friends. All 3 have lost men, spirit, money, and time to their old college acquaintance, Xenia. At various times and in various emotional disguises, Xenia has insinuated her way into their lives and practically demolished them. This sounds really interesting. I love a good Brothers Grimm tale. I don't read a lot of retellings, but when I do, I usually really enjoy them, so I'm thinking I need to read them more. I'm predicting anywhere from 3 to 3.5 stars for this one because I'm still not really sure what to expect. Most of these books sound like really low ratings, but really a 3-star is a good in the middle for me. Like, it wasn't a favorite, but I enjoyed it, and it's not worth 2 stars because 2 stars is getting pretty low and I didn't really like this book that much. So 3 stars is a really solid rating from me and makes that a book worth reading. So I hope that all of you will be joining us in the Margaret Atwood read-along. I'm excited to discuss these books with the other people in the book club. I will be, of course, continuing these videos throughout the year. Eventually, whenever we're done with all the Margaret Atwood books, I think it would be so fun to do the reread, rewrite, or burn tag, and just, like, pull 3 random books out of what we've been reading and be like, which one would you reread, rewrite, or burn? So I think that's going to be really interesting when I get around to it. Please like, subscribe, be my friend on social media, and I will see all of you in my next video. Bye, friends.